You wake up later than you meant to, the alarm long forgotten, the morning already slipping away. Before your feet touch the floor, you're scrolling, watching strangers who seem to have their lives figured out, who look certain and grounded in ways you've never felt. You tell yourself you'll start today, that you'll finally do the thing you've been avoiding, but somehow the hours dissolve into the same loop. Small distractions, small escapes, small promises, you'll try again tomorrow. By evening, the ache returns, the subtle shame of feeling capable yet strangely unable to move. You sense a potential inside you, something bright and unfinished, but you can't bring it into the real world. Carl Jung once wrote that the Puer Eternus lives a provisional life, always preparing, never arriving. And maybe that's why you feel stuck, not because you don't care, but because you're waiting for a version of yourself that finally feels ready, confident, unafraid. Some days you feel like an adult, responsible, aware, almost stable. Other days you feel like a child wearing an adult's body, hoping no one notices how unsure you really are. You keep circling the same dreams without landing on them, afraid that choosing one life means giving up all the others, afraid that growing up means losing something essential. Your freedom, your creativity, or the playful part of you that once made life feel magical. But beneath that fear is something deeper, a quiet recognition that you can't stay here forever. Something in you is restless, tired of the loop, tired of the waiting. And as you stand at this strange crossing point between who you are and who you could be, a question begins to form, one you've avoided for years, but can't escape any longer. Why do some men grow older, yet never truly grow up? To understand why some men look fully grown on the outside yet feel unfinished on the inside, we have to go back to where the fear began, childhood. These men don't stay boys because they're lazy. They stay boys because adulthood feels like a place they were never prepared to enter. Responsibility doesn't feel like a step forward. It feels like stepping into danger. Every attempt to grow triggers an old whisper inside. You're not safe out there. They're not resisting maturity, they're protecting themselves. Some grew up overprotected. Every difficulty was smoothed out, every problem solved before they could try. They were loved but shielded from struggle. Psychology calls this learned helplessness. When a child never practices facing challenges, he never learns, I can do this. So as adults, even small tasks feel overwhelming. A phone call, a deadline, a commitment. Their body reacts with stress, not from weakness, but from never building the muscle of independence. Others grew up in the opposite world, emotionally neglected. No guidance, no comfort, no one to help them understand fear or sadness. So they turned inward. They built private worlds, books, games, fantasies, because those worlds felt safer than the real one. According to attachment theory, children without emotional safety often become avoidantly attached, leaning on imagination, because reality feels unpredictable and sharp. Different childhoods, but the same quiet belief forms inside them. The world is unstable and I'm not strong enough for it. Research from the University of Virginia shows that people raised in inconsistent emotional environments avoid long-term planning. They fear the future will fall apart the way things once did. So they stay in the almost ready, almost starting, almost growing. You can see this fear in their patterns. They start projects full of excitement, then disappear when steady effort is required. They fall in love fast, then retreat when intimacy begins to deepen. They dream big but freeze when it's time to act. This isn't irresponsibility. It's a nervous system trained by early uncertainty. Stability feels threatening. Escape becomes instinct. And here's the paradox. These men are often incredibly charming, sensitive, imaginative, emotionally expressive. Jung called this the light of the Puer Eternus, the youthful spark capable of beauty, creativity, and vision. But without grounding, that light burns too fast. Jung wrote, "The boy does not grow because he does not touch the earth." Their problem isn't potential, they have plenty. Their struggle is believing they can survive the weight of reality. But they become stuck between two worlds. One is the dream world where everything feels safe and possible. The other is real life, where choices matter and no one can stay a child forever. Frozen between the two, they wait hoping change will happen without risk. But life doesn't move them, and that is how a man grows older, year after year, while still carrying the heart of a boy inside. There comes a quiet moment in every man-child's life when something starts to feel off. Maybe it's watching his friends move forward, or realizing another week slipped by with nothing to show for it. Maybe it's the silence of his own room at night, when all the noise fades and the truth becomes harder to outrun. This small discomfort is the first appearance of the shadow, the part of him that knows deep down that something has stopped working. The shadow doesn't arrive with explosions, it shows up as patterns, quitting jobs right when they matter, relationships that spark fast but collapse at the first sign of depth, dreams that live beautifully in his mind but never survive in the real world. He always has explanations. It wasn't the right time. I'm just not inspired anymore. I need my space. But the pattern is the same. He's not progressing. He's orbiting, and every year the orbit gets tighter. Psychologists call this self-handicapping a protective behavior, where someone avoids giving full effort so they never have to face the possibility of failure. Harvard researcher Stephen Berglas explains, self-handicapping lets a person fail on their own terms rather than risk discovering their limits. That's the shadow at work, fear disguised as freedom, avoidance disguised as independence. When discomfort grows, he escapes into intensity, new ideas, new crushes, new hobbies, new obsessions. Not because he's shallow, but because intensity is easier than consistency. Dopamine studies from UCLA show that novelty creates fast emotional spikes, but reduces the brain's tolerance for routine. The man-child becomes addicted to the spike. Sparks keep him alive. The shadow also reveals itself in love. At first, he gives everything, emotion, passion, presence. But as the relationship deepens, something inside him tightens. His nervous system reacts as if closeness is danger. Attachment expert Dr. Sue Johnson calls this the avoidant protest, wanting love but fearing the weight of truly being seen. So he pulls back, confuses his partner, and hurts himself. Not out of malice, but out of fear he cannot name. Outside, he may look carefree. Inside, he carries a heavy, private shame. Shame that he's falling behind, that he's not becoming the man he hoped he would be, that people will eventually see he's not as exceptional as he once believed. Shame is the fuel of the shadow. The more he hides it, the stronger it grows. And this is the real tragedy. The more he avoids responsibility, the heavier responsibility becomes. The more he avoids choosing, the more terrifying every choice feels. Jung once wrote, "What you resist not only persists, it grows." That's exactly what happens here. The boy resists adulthood so fiercely that adulthood becomes a monster in his mind. But the shadow isn't punishment. It's the beginning of transformation. It's the pressure that builds before a breakthrough. The darkness that forces him to finally face himself and choose a different way forward. There comes a moment in every eternal boy's life when even he can't pretend anymore. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or some dramatic crisis usually. It begins quietly. He wakes up one morning and realizes he's 20, 8, or 32. A bill he forgot to pay. A partner who looks at him with disappointment instead of hope. A missed deadline. A friend who just got promoted while he's still figuring things out. Small things, but they create the first cracks in the fantasy world he's been living in, cracks that hurt, because they show him something he's avoided for years. Life is moving, and he's not. Psychologists call this moment a cognitive dissonance snap, the point where the gap between who he thinks he is and who he has actually become grows too wide for the mind to keep stitching together. All the excuses he once leaned on, I just need more time, I haven't met the right opportunity, my potential will show eventually, stop sounding comforting and start sounding hollow. The illusion that one day everything will magically align begins to collapse under the weight of reality. For many men, this breaking point arrives through love. A girlfriend who used to believe in him finally walks away. Not because he was cruel or unloving, but because everything with him stayed in the realm of almost serious, almost stable, almost growing. And the most painful part? He realizes she didn't leave because she found someone better. She left because he never stepped forward. That quiet heartbreak becomes a mirror he can no longer avoid. For others, the collapse shows up at work. Another unfinished project, another "I'll start next month," another wave of envy watching peers surpass him. Inside, he tells himself the same old story. This job isn't the right fit. It's not my real passion. But for the first time, a new thought slips in. What if the problem is me? It's a terrifying question because it threatens his entire identity. The gifted kid, the creative one, the one who was meant for more. Researchers who study prolonged adolescence call this experience a narcissistic injury, not arrogance, but the emotional wound that happens when a man's idealized self-image finally collapses. The Puer Eternus survives by believing he is special. When life challenges that belief, he feels exposed, ashamed, and lost. But paradoxically, this wound is the beginning of self-awarenessness. Carl Jung wrote, "The collapse of an illusion is not a failure, it is the birth of consciousness." When the fantasy falls apart, it feels like losing everything: confidence, charm, the imagination he relied on for so long. But the truth is, the fantasy isn't dying to punish him, it's dying to free him. As Jung said, you do not enter real life until your fantasies die. And for the first time, he begins to see the world without filters. Heavy, yes. Imperfect, yes. But real. And real is something he's never allowed himself to fully touch before. The breaking point is not the death of the inner boy, it's the moment the inner man begins to wake up. The boy cannot carry the weight anymore. He doesn't know how, he was never meant to. And in that painful recognition, heartbreak, failure, embarrassment, or simply the exhaustion of his own excuses, the man inside finally has space to rise. Not with grand gestures, but with a small shift. The quiet readiness to face the world as it is, not as he wishes it to be. That's where transformation begins. When a man reaches that breaking point, the first instinct is to run again. To escape into distraction, into another fantasy, into another fresh start. That isn't really new, but something is different now. The escape doesn't work the way it used to. The games don't numb him. The late night scrolling doesn't quiet the anxiety. The daydreams no longer feel comforting, just sad. This is the moment psychologists call disillusionment fatigue, when the strategies that once protected him stop protecting him at all. And strangely, that exhaustion becomes the beginning of healing. Healing doesn't start with motivation or discipline or some big, heroic decision. It usually begins with something embarrassingly small. Washing a few dishes, replying to an email he has avoided for weeks, going for a 10-minute walk, paying one overdue bill. These tiny moments matter because they do something important inside the brain. Research from Stanford psychologist B.J. Fogg shows that small wins create the fastest and most durable behavior change, not dramatic goals, but microscopic steps that rebuild self-trust. For the Puer Eternus, these tiny actions whisper something he has never truly believed. I can handle this. And yet, the real challenge isn't the action itself. It's the feelings underneath the panic, the shame, the old fear that responsibility equals danger. Neuroscience calls this amygdala overactivation, a survival response shaped in childhood. When he sends a job application or sets a boundary or finishes a task, his body reacts as if something terrible might happen. His chest tightens, his thoughts speed up, he wants to disappear. This isn't weakness, it's conditioning. His nervous system learned long ago that being responsible meant being judged, abandoned, or overwhelmed. Healing means teaching the body something new, that adulthood is not a threat. This is why the first real step is not about changing his life, it's about changing his relationship with fear. Many men don't realize this, but fear is not the enemy. Fear is information. Fear is a map pointing directly to the places that were never nurtured, never guided, never supported. Jung once wrote, "Where your fear is, there lies your task." And when a man starts to face even one small fear without running, the inner boy inside him feels something he hasn't felt in years: safety. Support becomes essential here. Not rescuers, not people who step in and do things for him, but people who offer what psychologists call co-regulation, the calming effect of being around someone steady, a friend who listens without judgment, a partner who doesn't mother him but also doesn't shame him, a mentor who says, "Yes, it's hard, do it anyway." The Puer Eternus doesn't need saving. He needs someone who reflects back the adult he is trying to become. Slowly, so slowly he barely notices his world shifts. One task completed becomes two. One honest conversation becomes a habit. One apology becomes a new beginning. And with each step, he feels something unfamiliar yet powerful, the pride of showing up, not perfectly, not dramatically, just consistently enough to feel life forming around him instead of slipping through his fingers. This is the first real taste of adulthood, not a prison, but a foundation. And then, without fanfare, without any grand epiphany, he reaches a quiet realization. Growing up was never about killing the dreamer inside him. It was about giving that dreamer a chance to finally build something real. That small understanding is where the healing truly begins, not in fantasy, not in escape, but in the slow, steady, grounded act of living one real day at a time. There comes a point after the collapse, after the small steps, after the quiet rebuilding, when a man begins to recognize a strange new feeling in his chest. It isn't anxiety, it isn't numbness, it's something softer, heavier, calmer. Psychologists call it earned stability, the kind of confidence that doesn't come from talent, charm, or fantasies, but from showing up for your own life one day at a time. It's subtle, it's quiet, but it's the first true sign that a boy inside him is finally becoming a man. With this stability comes an even bigger shift. Responsibility stops feeling like a threat. It starts to feel like belonging, like purpose, like freedom. Neuroscience researcher Dan Siegel notes that when the brain begins forming new pathways through consistent action, fear responses reduce and self-regulation increases. The same tasks that once triggered panic, answering emails, committing to schedules, staying in relationships now feel manageable. Not easy, just human. And for someone who once lived in fantasy, manageable is a miracle. But something else changes too. He stops chasing intensity. He starts valuing consistency. He no longer needs the high of a new plan, a new passion, a new woman, a new identity. Instead, he learns to build slow warmth, the kind that comes from repetition, from presence, from being committed even when things feel boring. This is where real maturity shows up, not in dramatic breakthroughs, but in the choice to stay when it's uncomfortable, Stay when it's imperfect. Stay when it demands growth instead of escape. And for the first time, he sees relationships differently. Not as escapes, not as storylines, not as mirrors for his potential, but as partnerships, two people walking in the same direction, both flawed, both learning. He begins to understand what therapists call secure functioning, love that is steady, reciprocal, honest, and safe. No more disappearing when things get real. No more pushing people away at the first sign of vulnerability. He starts believing he can show up, not as a fantasy partner, but as a real one. His creativity also evolves. It's no longer an escape from the world, but a contribution to it. The ideas that once lived only in notebooks or daydreams finally find form. Projects finished, art created, skills practiced, work completed. Jung believed that true creativity is not in fantasy, but in marrying the inner world with the outer world. That's exactly what happens here. The dreamer doesn't die. He finally has a home to live in. And slowly, a deeper identity forms. Not the inflated I could be anything identity of the Puer Eternus. Not the defeated I'm not capable identity of collapse. But a grounded identity. I know who I am because I show up. This is the man he was always meant to become. Not perfect, not fearless, but whole. In the end, the transformation is quiet. No applause, no epiphany, no cinematic moment. Just a man waking up one morning and realizing he no longer feels like he's running from life. He feels like he's living it, fully, imperfectly. Honestly, the eternal boy inside him is still there, but he is no longer driving. He has a place, a voice, a softness, and the man he has become finally has enough strength to hold both the dreamer and the adult together. That's what growing up truly is, not surrendering the magic of youth, but giving it structure, roots, and a place to belong. In the end, growing up isn't about becoming someone perfect. It's about choosing one quiet day at a time to meet life instead of running from it. If a part of this story felt familiar, let it be a sign not of failure, but of readiness. And if you're on this journey too, you don't have to walk it alone. Share what resonated with you in the comments. Your words might be the mirror someone else needs to finally begin.